Pottery is the perfect culmination of the four elements: water, earth, fire, and air. I mean, it's really simple. Water and earth, that's clay. You then dry it in the air, which solidifies its form. Then you sacrifice it to the fire, where it may or may not survive, but if it does, it's then impervious to those elements. This is your guide on firing wild clay pottery without a kiln. You saw me make this canteen. Well, that one actually cracked while drying, so I made a different one. I like the shape of this one better. It's thinner walled, it holds more water. I love how it's turned out so far. I hope it survives the fire. We start everything with a primary fire, and this is just to warm up the pots. I dig a shallow fire pit. I don't want it too deep because I want this fire to have lots of oxygen. In the fire pit, I stack 3 rocks in the center, and this is what all the pots will rest on. This makes sure there's airflow and therefore heat underneath them. Start a small fire, put your pots around it on the bank. Every now and then you're going to give them a quarter turn clockwise. You can go counterclockwise if you want. Just remember which direction you're turning them, or you'll forget and then keep turning them back and forth, and one side will get too hot and it'll crack because of the heat difference. During this preheat, any last moisture is being driven out. That greatly reduces their chances of breaking in the secondary fire, and that's where they get really hot. Let them preheat for a good half hour, turning them every so often. You want them close so they're getting physically hot to the touch, but just out of reach of the flames. Let your fire burn down to ashes. During this time, I chop firewood, make a good stack of it. I don't like using any firewood that's thicker than my forearm. That's my max thickness because you want a lot of airflow with this fire. More air means higher temperatures. Once your primary fire is burned down, you can move the coals aside. Now you can go ahead and stack your pots. They can all be leaning against each other. On pots you want the least amount of fire clouds on, put them in the center and put the other pottery around it to protect it. How you stack the wood affects how hot the fire gets and how hard your pottery fires. By using wood of this maximum thickness and stacking it in densely upright in teepee formation with still just enough room for air to circulate around decently, this is going to create a very hot fire that burns tall, hopefully gets this pottery around 14 or 1500 degrees. At this point you can either start your fire from the bottom or you can start it from the top and let it burn down. It tends to be a little bit more gradual that way, seems to be a little nicer on the pots. As it burns down, just watch the show. Your pot should reach a nice orangey red color if you're able to see them within the fire. You want them to be glowing the same color as the coals. Now with a fire like this, that temperature can range from 1200 degrees to upwards of 15 or 1600. If the fire breaks apart, you'll notice the pots start cooling down a little bit. That's just fine. They've gotten to their peak temperature. Sounding good. Just be careful of sudden breezes. They can crack your pots while they're still really hot. And don't quench them in water. That's going to shatter them. I'm so excited that I had a fully successful firing. I got the ratios of this clay just right. It took some experimentation, but I love this clay now. Everything fired a little more red than I expected, honestly. This was a very oxidizing fire, so even a little bit of iron in the clay can cause a red blush like this. Listen to that deep, rich bell. I love all the character this canteen ended up with. It holds a lot of water, it's durable. So in the next part, I'm going to make a stopper and a carrying bag for it and show you how to seal it so it doesn't seep out water.